What up, everybody? It is a special edition of the Pinwheels and Ivy podcast. My name is Mitchell Kaminski. Unfortunately, I got to pay the air conditioning bill somehow, so I got to work later tonight. So we'll not be able to join the main show with Fids, Aldo, and Father Zoe. So make sure you're tuning in to that one. But you get a little bonus episode because I got some thoughts. Obviously, it was a big week for both sides of town. So without further ado, let's tap this keg. Well, I guess since it's just me, probably just tap this six pack, I guess. We'll go with that. As always, show brought to you by Uncle Bud's. I have yet to see a residual check from them, but I hear they are very good. That's what Zoe told me. And I'll take his word for it. So make sure you go there. If you're a White Sox fan, you want to drink your sorrows away after another disappointing loss, go to Uncle Bud's. And unlike those bastards from Wings and Rings, they didn't vote against me in the 108 tournament. So even further reason to support them. Let's get into it. We'll start. I actually got some thoughts on the Cubs too. We'll get into later. I've had to watch a lot of Cubs games the past week between them playing the White Sox and then they played the Cardinals for a 4-game stretch. And in the newsroom, all they play is Cardinals games because it's one of the teams that we cover down there. So I've watched a lot of Cubs this past week, one of the games. So we got some thoughts on them too. But we'll start with the White Sox. I don't know if you're a White Sox fan, how you can't be sad about how everything went down because the window's over. Like that's what trading Lucas Giolito signified. And even if you think the returns are good, which we'll get into later, it's a sad day if you're a Sox fan, especially for Lucas Giolito. And kind of just like what him and Ronaldo Lopez represented. Because back in 2017 when they first got there, they make those trades and you're thinking, yeah, like this is going to be the start of a new era for the White Sox. They're finally going to turn it around. They're tearing this thing down to the studs. They're going to build it up right. I remember 16-year-old kid. It was like the first year I ever went to Sox Fest was that year. And, I growing up a baseball, addict. I love baseball. I love everything baseball. I was a baseball junkie. So this is the first year I'd gone to a Sox Fest. And, I was super excited. I remember how excited I was to meet Miguel Gonzalez that year just because I love it. It was like so cool to me. You can see all these players. And I remember Lucas Giolito was there and you hear all these things about him, especially because Adam Eaton was one of my favorite players on the White Sox before they traded them. Like the first stint around, not second stint, Adam Eaton. And this is before, it kind of soured with the whole Adam LaRoche fiasco, but I like the way he played. So I liked Adam Eaton when they traded for him. It took a while to buy in and I bought into it. It was like, yeah, this makes sense. This guy here, Lucas Giolito, top pitching prospect, is going to help turn us around. So I remember at that Sox Fest going up 16-year-old Mitch. I was super excited. Like, hey, welcome to Chicago, Lucas. And, he's a tall guy and it kind of intimidating, for old Mitch Kaminski, who doesn't talk to many professional ball players. He's the nicest guy and he's an easy guy to root for. So I remember coming after that, I was always a big Lucas Giolito fan from that. And regardless of what you think about his White Sox career overall, he was a great representative for Chicago. It was a great story. Worst pitcher in baseball, turns it around, becomes an all-star. He represented the city and the team well. So it's sad to see him go from there because now it represents the window's over. So now let's go through all these trades before we get to the Cubs. We'll go through the White Sox ones, what we think about it. Now, I think with Rick Hahn, two things can be true. He's a bad general manager. I mean, this is his third time around. He should have been fired long ago. But, I mean, you can admit that he's very good at maximizing the returns you get for player values. I mean, he did it, obviously, with Adam Eaton. I thought that was a good return. I thought it was a good return for the Chris Sale trade. I mean, in hindsight, some of those guys didn't develop the way you thought. But, at the time, they looked like a good return. And I think he did the same thing here. Now, make no mistake, trading away good players is one of the easiest things to do as a general manager. That's the easy part is trading away guys to start a rebuild. The hard part is getting the right pieces in that all fit together and the right free agents to make, the team work, which clearly he hasn't been able to do 3 times around. So no mistake. I'm not, Rick Hahn should be extended for getting good returns. No, that's the easiest part of the job. But I think if you go through a lot of these trades, he did a pretty good job getting value for a lot of them. Now, what I would be confused about is the direction they want to go. Because you got all this wishy-washy stuff of, oh, we're going to contend in 2024. But then we're going to trade Dylan Cease too. So you got to pick a lane. That's the one thing I was confused about. Well, we'll start with Lucas Giolito. You got the Edgar Quiero and Kai Bush. Thought it was Kyle Busch when they first got him. That would have been a bad trade for a team with locker room issues. Don't want to add Kyle Busch to the mix. But Kai Busch, left-handed pitcher. Who knows? And I'm not going to pretend like I know a bunch about these prospects. But for a left-handed, catcher, one of the, better ranked prospects in the Angels system. We're a team that needs catching. Seb, as much as I like Seb ain't the future of this team. So I think that's a good get, despite the fact defense is a little lacking. Hopefully we can develop them. But for a guy on an expiring contract, that's not a bad return. Now, my favorite one was the Lance Lynn trade. I thought they did really well for Lance Lynn and Joe Kelly because I love Lance too. Like, that made me sad. It was heartbreaking to see him go. I know he sucked, but I still like Lance, strutting around, grabbing the junk, yelling at the camera. I mean, what's not to like? You gotta love Lance. As Zoe always says, that's like a drink a 30 pack with guy. But he was terrible this year. I was surprised they got anything of value for him and Joe Kelly. So with Nick Nastrini, the Dodgers, I think he was their 10th best prospect. Baseball America had him almost as high as 6th. So that's a pretty good pitching prospect. I actually really like that Jordan Leisure, though, they got back for him. And just like reading from what scouts say, really good fastball. Actually, a higher rated fastball, Nastrini. He's tall, big presence on the mound, which you like from a starter. Because of his extension, that fastball, which already is in the upper 90s, is like 98. I think he can hit 100 from what I saw. But with that extension, the scouts say like the fastball looks like it rises, like with the long stride that he has. And, looking at some of the stats here, in 3 seasons in the Dodgers system, he limited opponents to a 188 average. And he's the White Sox now a 26th ranked prospect. So I think that's a sneaky good pickup that Rick Hahn got, especially if you're going to get like a throwing guy. Now, Trace Thompson, I mean, don't put too much stock on him. That he was just like an added throw-in. But I really like what they got with Leisure. Now, Nastrini, I think, is good too. His first full season with the Dodgers, 169 strikeouts, 13 strikeouts per 9 innings, 180 opponent average, and it took him just 1 season to shoot up through Double-A. So that's a good trade too for 2 guys that not been very good. Lynn clearly didn't want to be there. You could hear with his comments in the front office. Didn't look like he was having a good time. So I was happy with what they got for him. Now, Kendall Graveman, too, another one. Even the fact that he was controllable, he couldn't protect the league for shit. And I like Kendall Graveman more than Zoe did. But you're not winning this year. There's no point in having a Kendall Graveman. I don't think they're winning next year. So you get another guy with Corey Lee. Let's see what you can get. And what I took away later in free agency, there was the tweet like the White Sox are going to try and give away Yasmani Grandal. I took that as they want to give Lee some reps. So that I think that makes sense. There's no reason that Yasmani Grandal, that obviously they couldn't trade him. I mean, it's hard to trade a catcher at the deadline as it is, especially one whose knees are shot. His defense has deteriorated and he doesn't hit for power anymore. So of course they weren't going to get anything for him. But I think you give Lee a couple more months in Charlotte, give him a little bit more time. September they'll come around. There's no reason Grandal should still be on the roster. So I think, might as well, that was not a bad trade either. Now the final one was very confusing to me with Jake Burger. Especially, and this is where I kind of have a bone to pick with Rick Hahn. Like, you got to pick a lane. If you're going to say you guys are contending next year and you want to take advantage of that weak AL Central again, fine. I think it would be stupid considering, like, we've shown that this team can't win. You can't put a winning team together. But, like, Jake Burger's a controllable guy, dirt cheap, hits for power on a team that doesn't have much. And by the way, the White Sox, one of the reasons they stink is they're terrible at home. They always get out-homered at home, and they lose a lot of games at home. And that's why. They're in a hitter's ballpark, and they don't hit home runs. Well, guess who hits home runs a lot at home? Jake Burger. So that one, and I get the batting average wasn't great. I get the defense wasn't there. So, if you're going to say you're going to contend, then I feel like he should be a guy that probably should have stayed. Now, if you are committing down the path, like we're tearing this thing down again, which I got some issues there too, if Rick Hahn's going to be in charge of that. But I can see why you'd want to trade him because he shouldn't be at second base. He doesn't play good enough defense. And Moncada, I think there were some rumblings they were trying to get rid of him. I think the Sox are kind of sick of his shit. He doesn't play he doesn't hit well. He's always hurt, very inconsistent, pouty attitude. And Zoe hits it right on the head. Every time he makes a mistake, you'll see him grimace or pretend he's in pain. So I think the Sox were trying to find someone to trade partner, but too much money on that contract. No one wants him. And Moncada's just a better defender. So he's going to be the third baseman. No matter, he was just going to be the third baseman. You can't have Burger at second. So if you are going down the rebuilding path, I get it. And now why not give Sosa some reps? Now is the time, the rest of the season, lost season. You call up a guy like Sosa, you see what you got. But the trade, Jake Burger trade confused me just because now I don't know what direction they're going. They're sending out mixed messages with what they're doing. Now that Jake Eder, I believe his name is, it sounds like an interesting prospect. Double A still, had Tommy John. But one scout, from what I was reading before the Tommy John surgery, said like he's arguably the best pitching prospect in baseball. He thinks he was the most talented guy in the Marlins system, and that was before the arm injury. So, I mean, that's when that was a gamble. It better work. But overall reaction, I think Rick Hahn did a great job getting value for players. But that's the easiest thing to do as a general manager. I mean, it just is. So, and I'm very confused in the direction. I don't think they really have a direction. I don't think he knows what the hell he's doing. And it's sad. And it's really sad, too, with this window that should have been open longer. And like I said, the Lucas Giolito trade signaled the end of the window. This team had talent. I know they have talent because all these other teams wanted their players. I mean, even Kenyon Middleton, who they traded the Yankees, I don't even know who the return was for that, if I'm being honest. I'm not going to embarrass myself by pretending to know who that guy was, so we won't talk about that one as much. But they have talent because like all these other teams wanted their players. And it kind of goes to they never had the guy that when the team was in a slump could carry him over the top through the dog days of summer, put him on their back, like a Bryce Harper type guy that could put the offense on their back and carry them through to the promised land. You need a guy like that. And I think Jose Abreu, a lot of his value was he was kind of that guy. Now, he's not to the caliber where he's going to elevate you to the postseason, but you could see the decline. They don't have an offensive identity. The offense got worse after Abreu left. And there's a reason for that. I think Abreu, you could see moments. There was a game that stood out last year where he could kind of put the team up for spurts. Not at the same level as like a superstar guy, but there was one game against Detroit. I remember he had a base hit. It was late in the game, and his were hovering around 500, trying to make a run right after the All-Star break. And he tags up on a ball that he had no business tagging up on, and he gets to second base, putting him in scoring position. And then he came around to score the go-ahead run because he got in position to score there. Or late in the season against the Guardians, kind of a must-win game. I believe in September. Ninth inning, needs a hit off of that Class A, and he does. He came up with a clutch knock. So he would kind of do that, but the Sox never just had that guy, and that's what they were missing because you knew this team was talented. And that's what's so disappointing about the whole thing with the trades. It just sucks. Sally Chico Lobby in Chicago. Yeah, if there was somehow a World Series, I think there's a better chance that hell freezes over before there's a World Series parade for the White Sox next year. I actually think the Cubs have a better chance of making the World Series. We'll get to that in just a second. But I mean, it makes me sick, and especially Lucas Giolito. I like Lucas. I like Jake Berger too, Missouri Valley Brethren, and they trade him. It's like I get if you want to give Sosa some reps, but like, god damn, like what the fuck? What is their direction? I don't know. I don't think Rick Hahn knows. Let's get to the Cubs, actually. I'm actually excited to talk about them. I watched this team Saturday against the Cardinals, and I really like that team. And I think they're a year away still, but even against the Sox, you see them. They can hit for power. They're aggressive on the base pass. That lineup's really well constructed. You listen to Adam Wainwright's comments after the game. Now, mind you, Adam Wainwright kind of washed. He couldn't break a pane of glass at this point. But he was talking about the difficulty of navigating that lineup just because of how balanced they are. And you see a lot of these guys, they hit a pretty good average. They got some guys with some pop. Obviously, they needed a third baseman still. I'm a Nick Madrigal stan. It was funny. I was wearing a Albert Pujols jersey I got that was free for the Cardinals game. I got it as like a free giveaway. So I had the Cardinals jersey on, but every time Nick Madrigal came up, I'm like cheering because his first game back. Well, like, oh, let's go, Nick. And I was like, what the hell are you doing? Why do you like Nick Madrigal? Yeah, long story. But like it's a good team. And so I'm glad Jed rewarded them for playing well in that stretch because it's demoralizing to him. And he's already lost a lot of trust, I think, from the first time he traded a lot of those guys like Rizzo and all of them. You lose a little bit of credibility there, the way I think that whole thing went down. I mean, Fids will be the first to tell you. I don't think a lot of players like how that all went down. But now they played well. He rewarded them with their efforts by getting Candelario. I think that was a good pickup. I think they need a couple more bullpen arms. I believe they got a guy from the Rockies, but I think it was a good deadline for him. That's a team that's not going to win the World Series. You don't mortgage your future on that team, but you reward them for their efforts. It's fun. Let's see if we can win the division. So that's why I kind of like the direction they were in now. And I also think too, especially because like a lot of people wanted to overreact Like, oh, you got to extend Bellinger. You got to do this. You got to push all your chips in. I mean, a lot of people were saying this about Stroman a couple months ago, too, after he had that tweet. Like, hey, I want to be re-signed. Jed, I'll give him credit because, and I think it's the same thing with Bellinger as far as an extension goes. You don't want to pay a guy when his value is at the highest. Stroman's value was at the highest at that point. Jed's like, yeah, we're going to hold off on an extension here. And now look, Stroman's come crashing back down to earth. So, I mean, I kind of like what he did. I don't think you're pushing all in. I think you kind of hold off on Bellinger too, because I think his stock is at all-time high as far as an extension goes. But like, yeah, you throw him a bone a little bit, kind of like you're contending, and then this offseason can reassess, and that's when you really need to go all in for the Cubs. I kind of like what they did. Back to the White Sox really quick. Some of the guys that didn't get traded. There was a real push. Like a lot of people were really pushing to like, oh, I want to see Dylan Cease traded. We have a very smart writer for Sports Mockery who covers the White Sox with us. Is like, oh, I'm really praying for Dylan Cease trade. Like, I don't understand like what the big rush was. If you don't get the value you want for the guy, why trade him? Because this team shows like they don't develop players all that well. So a prospect you're hoping is going to be as good as Dylan Cease. And even if you are going the rebuilding route for the White Sox and you're not going to contend next year, which goes back to the point, I don't know what the hell they're doing because you don't know what the direction is. But especially for Dylan Cease, you got the 2 years of control. You can trade him in the offseason. If the package isn't what you wanted, I mean, there's no reason to trade him just to trade him. Don't just trade guys for the sake of trading them if you have guys of value. And that's like I was going back to what I said, Rick Hahn deserves a lot of criticism. One thing he's good at is getting the max value for players. So if he didn't like the return for Dylan Cease, no need to trade him. And he could always raise his value during the offseason too. So, but like, he's a guy that you'd want next year if you're going down that we're going to contend route. That's why I think you just got to pick a lane. So, yeah, Alex brings up a good point too. If we want Rick Hahn to be fired, he says, if we want to fire Rick Hahn, why do we want to be the one to decide what to do with Cease? I agree with that as well. That's the other reason why I'm glad he didn't necessarily get traded this time by. Now, I don't think there's any indication that he's going to be gone. And if you listen to his word salad and the Rick Hahn bullshit, I can't with him anymore. But like, yeah, that's another good point too. Like if for one of the key guys, you can get a massive return. I don't think Rick Hahn should be the one deciding what we do with them. So unfortunately, I don't think he's getting fired. So it's just kind of, it is what it is. But that's all I got for both these teams and kind of my thoughts on it. It's just it's a sad day for the White Sox. And I hate to say it, the Cubs are more fun to watch. That is the first time. I don't usually root for the Cubs. I almost never do. But I mean, it's hard to deny. Like that's a fun team. I hope they do well down the stretch. So we'll see. That's all I got for you. Make sure you're listening tonight. I will say we'll do a quick. We'll throw you guys a bone. Maybe Zoe will do one later. We'll do a quick NASCAR minute. I don't have the same graphics, but I got a funny audio clip, so I'll rip the music real quick. Oh wait, maybe not. Blown it already. So Byron, all right, so let's get into it. This week's race kind of sucked. It was at Richmond. Chris Buescher won. Don't care about that. It was a strategy race. There's no cautions, no drama. I want to talk about Pocono instead. The week before, the Tricky Triangle. That's where all the drama went down. Hilarious moment. And this is the real reason I wanted to do this. I got to play the audio. Joey Logano, as we know. And I've talked to Joey Logano at Gateway once. Yeah, I know. Name drop. He's a nice guy out of the car. Kind of a nerd. Like, we going over. He's like, oh, hey, guys, that's just short track racing. Well, he got in a wreck early in the race. And you ever have that moment where you're stuck in traffic and, like, you're ranting and you're, like, screaming? Well, that was Joey Logano because he's pissed. He's an asshole in the car once he puts the helmet on. So his car crashed. All of his tires were flattened. He thought he could still race. So he was trying to get the crew at Pocono to hook up his truck. And this was the result. Unfortunately, he didn't realize there was an audio camera in there. So I'm going to play the audio from his in-car. And you can hear just Joey Logano pissed.
Put the fucking truck to it. Put the truck to the fucking thing. Come here. What do you want? Hook the thing out. We're pushing. I can't push it. Come here. I can't drive it. I need a tow truck. What's out? You want to be hooked? Follow me in. Yeah. Hook it up. Lift it up. Hook it up. God damn it, stupid son of a bitch.
The stupid son of a bitch at the end. It's like, God damn it, stupid son of a bitch. So his car got hooked up. I think the driver was pissed at him for screaming at him and gave him the bumpiest ride possible back to pit lane. But late race, we'll go with the end of the race now. Late race restart. Some little drama here. Kyle Larson. He's on the outside. Denny Hamlin's trying to run him down. It's tough to pass at Pocono. He dives to the inside. He starts running Larson up the track. Gives him a little bump. There's contact. Hamlin will go on his podcast because, he's a narcissist. He'll be like, oh, no, there's no contact. That was just the air. No, there was contact. He runs him way up into the lane. Like, you look at the car in, like, back behind him in lane 2, the way it worked. Like, that's where Denny Hamlin was. Like, completely runs Larson up the track. He hits the wall. Hamlin makes the pass. That goes on to be the race-winning move. He crossed the finish line. He gets his 50th win of his career. And if you want to look at a funny photo, like, just look at, like, he's doing his burnout and all these fans are giving him the double bird salute or whatever. Everyone's booing him. But it ended on a caution. So he's coming down the last lap. There was a wreck in the back because Corey LaJoie, professional podcaster, wrecks Ryan Preece. So Ryan Preece is fuming. So the drama's not over. After the race on pit road, Preece comes running up to LaJoie's car, opens the window, and he's like, hey, that was a fucking chicken shit move. He's like slapping his helmet around, and then LaJoie's goons have to come in and pull him away from the car. So wild Pocono race. It was a shame I couldn't talk about it last week, but there you go. That's your NASCAR Minute. Make sure you guys are tuning in tonight. You'll want to hear what Fids and Aldo and Matt have to say about the White Sox disappointment. I don't hate LaJoie. I just think he's a little overrated. He's always crying about his crappy equipment. I think he's all right. He's perfectly acceptable. Just think he's a little overrated. But yeah, make sure you guys tune in tonight at 8. Thank you for those who tuned in. Really appreciate it. Sad I cannot be there, but tune in tonight.